Bing bong. Okay, back on the air. Ah, shit. So we just got done recording some real heavy stuff. So I guess it's time to let our hair down and relax a little bit.
Hey, Will. Will.
What's up?
What's up, everybody? This is Bits and Pieces number 11. I am your co-host, Jason. Will is over here. I'm laid back in my chair. I do like this chair.
It's funny you say laid back after we just watched the trailer for Late Back Camp as well.
That is correct. It's opening in Hong Kong.
Coming out in Hong Kong. Oh, I can't wait.
So, Will, what makes you think that the discussion that we're about to embark on, is not serious at all?
I don't actually know what's going on.
Exactly, because...
What makes you think? I was like, oh, shit, am I...
Yeah.
Oh, the lights are dimming right now.
Yeah, exactly, because right now it is my turn to steer this ship for this BP.
Oh, Captain, my captain?
I am not going to stand on any desks, okay?
Don't say that because, oh, Captain, my captain means a bad ending as well.
True.
Because the captain goes down with his ship. I'll take back what I said. What's going on?
So, okay. Will, do you like anime?
No, of course not.
Well,
I'm a fraud. I don't actually care about anime and manga.
Then the fuck are we doing?
BP over, right?
Yeah, shit. Cancel that shit. Fuck.
No, okay. But yeah, okay. No, I love anime.
Yeah,
really,
and you watch a lot, right? So
I try to watch more than I should.
I mean, recently both of us are having less time due to our work
commitments and all that. Yeah,
but you and I still watch quite a bit.
Well, I'm sure that like prior to doing the podcast, like I definitely did not have nearly as many entries or hours like logged onto my anime list.
Yeah.
Now it's completely unrecognizable because back then it was just a lot of shonen, a lot of gore, occasional like fluff and all that. But now it's like a bit of everything, really.
And I would say among our friends, like we definitely rank, if not the top, like above average for sure. I would argue top.
Amongst our friends, we are the 1%.
Right. In terms of our weeb credentials, right? So it is, as we have done a lot of episodes on how prevalent and expanding, even though it is constricting a slight bit, that the anime and manga industry has more fans of the medium, right?
Yeah. I mean, we talked about that with like the proliferation of anime and manga.
Episode number 5.
Almost
That's correct.
2 years ago, yeah.
That's right. So, Will, the thing is that, what is an anime, Will?
It is an animation that derives from Japan.
Oh, okay. So that is your definition of anime. Is that correct?
Oh, wow. Where is this going?
So, Will, that is your definition. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, that's what I've led to. That's what I've seen. That's what I'm led to believe.
I'm not saying
right?
you're wrong, by the way. I'm just asking. Is this your final answer?
Yes, this is my final answer.
Okay. What is your definition of manga?
Comics that derive from Japan.
Okay. Did you know, Will, that it is not only Japan that creates animated works,
of course,
or creates graphic novel-esque.
Yes, but within the context of saying the words manga and anime, then yes, if we were to say comics, graphic novels, animated series and stuff, then like that opens up, a broader term.
Sure. So would it be fair to say that when you and I use the word comics, it refers mainly to the Western equivalent, things like Marvel and DC Comics and Vertigo and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Would you say then that for Korean, it would be manhwa, which is MANHWA, right? Would you say that's correct?
Yeah.
What about Chinese? Manhwa is
with a UA instead of a W.
Isn't it H? Doesn't it have an H?
Yeah, MHA. Yeah, so it's HUA instead of HWA.
Yeah. Okay. What about Avatar: The Last Airbender, Will?
Oh, God. We're actually having this conversation, and we're going to start talking about how Korean House is the greatest anime of all time.
What about Pokemon? Would you consider that a cartoon, Will?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's a cartoon that derived from a large media project, and therefore, like, it exists as an anime, yeah.
That
much in the same way that you would say like Yu-Gi-Oh is an anime and also Beyblade's anime. I mean,
so
Digimon's anime.
So it's not a cartoon; it's an anime.
Yeah, like the problem there is the fact that cartoon animation, it's all encompassing, whereas like the word anime itself is specific, at least in my opinion. So
I agree. By the way,
yes, it would be both. It would Pokemon is both a cartoon and an anime because all anime are cartoons, but not all cartoons are anime.
Right. So it's not mutually exclusive in that sense.
No.
Right. Okay. So that is sort of the discussion that I wanted to have with you today, because it is very sometimes touchy for certain people who go on certain message boards.
Is this the first time on the GAP that we're going to be talking about our Avatar: The Last Airbender? Because spoiler alert, I haven't watched it.
Yeah, I have, and also watched Legend of Korra, but there are plenty of other examples that I can sort of give that is in the same vein at the very least, right? But the reason why I want to bring all of this up is because I feel like when a certain medium gets bigger and bigger and bigger, it then becomes part of human nature to start to try to compartmentalize things and classify them such that each section is distinct,
like well-defined,
and
right?
well-defined and categorized, so then you know what. I mean, things like, if we exclude the whole definition of anime and whatnot, which we will get into, is the main crux of this, there are subgenres, right? There's like reverse isekai. It's within isekai, right? There is like even like
there's video game like isekais. There's reincarnation isekais.
There's villainous isekai. Like how is that possible? But it is. That's just the way it is now, right? So
I mean, the fact that when you have like Iyashikei, you also have like subgenres within that, where it's like, how can you be more defined as opposed to like something that is just generally like laser round fluff? Well, like, how do you then go from like slice of life to then like cute girls doing cute things? Like, and then within like the CGT, there's like also cute girls doing sewing, cute girls doing fishing, cute girls doing dancing and whatnot. It's like,
and then there are some that are like cute girls doing fucked up things. Like that's a legitimate category.
Yep.
So as more people are involved within the circle of anime and manga, which for the sake of argument right now, Will and I think we will both define anime and manga as animated shows or drawn art that
like animations, essentially,
right?
Yeah.
That it is from a Japanese origin. Would you say that then this?
Yes, as that would be like how I would define anime.
Right. Things are starting to become, because the circle of people that are interested in anime and manga is growing. I mean, we've talked about that endlessly, right? To the point where, I mean, I love to sort of use this example, and so do you to a certain degree. AOT rumbling, right? SIM, like, how is it possible that you get first on the US Billboard charts? But it's reality, it's real, and people love it, and I like it, and you like the song too.
I love it.
Right.
Rumbling is a fucking great song.
But when the line becomes blurred, on top of you get more and more people, things start to become contentious.
What are the points of contention that you want to bring up?
I just sort of want to have a discussion on what do you consider anime, what you don't consider anime. Does that conversation even matter? Does it?
Okay, there's a very classic example, actually.
Right.
Not even classic, it's like a very contemporary one. Do you consider Arcane anime?
You see, like I love, like, you see, I was about to mention that, right? I think Arcane, League of Legends in particular, is a very interesting example, because if you were to just look at League of Legends, the aesthetic of it is very clearly inspired in part
absolutely
by anime. There is just no doubt in my mind, right? But then I would say League of Legends, which was obviously a MOBA game that is based off of a Warcraft 3 mod, if you can go back. That's when it was called Dota. How do I say this? League of Legends has now been more or less, because Riot is the one that made the game, and they're kind of like, they're a Western company of Western origins, even though they are inspired by art and styles of Japanese origin, right? Arcane is like in this weird, I wouldn't say weird. Some people say it's very clear, but to me at least, it is less. It's way less clear than when it's making it out to be.
It's a Western animation that draws from Japanese inspiration, but that still doesn't make it an anime for me.
What about Yasuke?
That would be an anime.
Why is that?
Because it is an adaptation of a. Actually, it's not even.
Because
adaptation.
exactly, right? Because first of all, with Yasuke, right, regardless of how we feel about the show, right, if we just look at Yasuke, the production is first of all not 100% Japanese. Then you can say, then, well, I mean, outsourcing work goes to a lot of Vietnamese and Korean companies, right? But we still call them definitively, at least from you and I, we call it anime, right? But with LaShawn Thomas, it becomes less clear because he's sort of like the front man for Yasuke. Then you get the whole thing of Yasuke being, is actually, I don't know if it's based on an actual person, but it's based on,
yes, it's based on a African warrior that grew up in feudal Japan.
I know that the story is real, but I don't know if like historically it's real. So you just confirmed it. Okay. So then that is inherently Japanese because it is not a folklore. It is a Japanese historical event, incident, person, right? A figure. So that origins are in Japanese. But then LaShawn Thomas is very Western, even though he likes and loves anime. And then it's made by Mappa, right?
Yes, Mappa.
So, and then there's Flying Lotus, that is the OP and ED. But okay, sure, you can say that you can get any language musician or music artist to do the OP and ED. But where would you draw the line with Yasuke? Because I would say even in of itself, things like the Castlevania series or Yasuke, there is a certain look that it has with like Legend of Korra, or I guess more with Legend of Korra recently, that it just somehow has that Western anime look. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, no, but I mean, like,
and then I'm saying Western anime.
Wait, it is a Japanese American animation, though.
Sure,
right? But the thing there is, like, it's still a Japanese studio. It's still Japanese staff, and the line then is very much blurred, right?
Exactly.
Because originally, like, you would have, I'm not sure which one came first, whether they did the English voice acting first and then did the Japanese, or
but
vice
does that
versa.
even matter?
It wouldn't matter at all. But it's also like, for example, if we're talking about like where the source came from, then how would you classify Grimm?
Yeah,
right. Like
yeah, exactly, right. That's my point, right? Or like Blast of Tempest.
Yeah, where it derives from like a lot of Shakespearean works.
But it is clearly, in fact, if anything, that one.
What about the Little Red Riding Hood one you were talking that you watched before? The Red Hood anime.
The Red Hood anime. Shit.
You know which one I'm talking about?
No, I don't. I'm not trying to be difficult. I really don't remember.
There was an anime that had 2 seasons featuring a girl.
Oh, girl
in the Red Hood.
Snow White and with the red hair.
Yeah, that's it. Snow White, not Red Riding Hood. Yeah.
Right. So these with Snow White with the red hair, though, even though it is inspired by Western kind of Snow White fairy tale, and obviously the names are very Western oriented, it is through and through a Japanese production. In fact, if anything, that's more clear than, let's say, Yasuke. With Blast of Tempest, same thing. It's based on a Shakespearean, like, as an inspiration source, but everything else, for the most part, is the head of the staff, and most of the staff are Japanese in origin. So then I would consider that an anime. Also, the look of it is very anime-esque, right? Does it matter that we compartmentalize it like that? Because I think that it would be like, oh, how much of a percent Japanese it is, then therefore it is considered an anime. I think that discussion is both destructive but also important at the same time. I think it's destructive because why do we need to draw the line like that? But at the same time, I feel like someone having a very good concept of what they like and don't like is completely valid and fine.
I think in the case of Yasuke, like, yeah, you do have Mappa that is producing the series, and then you also have LaShawn Thomas, who, whilst, African American is working out of Japan, but licensed by Netflix, made with American money, produced also with American staff, it does make it a little bit harder to really classify it as an anime now.
Right. Also, Castlevania is in the similar vein. Castlevania based off of the super well-known Japanese video game by Konami, but everything else around it, minus the Japanese dub, seems to be actually, because I didn't pull it up in front of me, is a very Western staff, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So there are probably certain Japanese creative staffs, like or the executive producer or the scriptwriter or something like that, right? But it is what I would consider when I look at it like, oh, it's a Western anime.
Yeah, I think like, but then to attach the word anime on it was also kind of contradictory too, at least in my opinion, because I feel that anime itself would still need to be something that derived of Japanese origin, at least in terms of the studio, in terms of the directors, in terms of the people who at least not necessarily wrote the story, but attempt to adapt the story.
What about Flavors of Youth?
Flavors of Youth is a Sino-Japanese collaboration, but again, it's also down to representations of the Chinese lifestyle using a Japanese studio in collaboration with a Chinese studio. So it would be a Sino-Japanese animation.
Yeah, I know, right?
Like,
So-
it's also like if I were to say, for example, like Batman Ninja or Ninja Batman, like that is
Anime.
Yeah, it's anime, but it also then uses DC properties, and also the fact that there are two versions of it in which the English story is very different from the Japanese story. So it's like, would you then say that the Japanese story is anime, but the American story, the English version, is an animation?
Like, what about the Animatrix, right?
Yeah.
I mean, clearly it has the anime part kind of mixed in with a portmanteau of the Matrix, and clearly they use Japanese creators for some of it.
I think Trigger also did some stuff for Star Wars, right?
Star Wars Vision, yeah.
Yeah, so-
I think multiple studios and multiple creators have done that. Yeah.
I think the other thing though is that like when it comes to having studios outside of your country of origin working on things, it's like outsourcing has been around for a while.
Of course,
right?
yes, I mentioned that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right. Like if we if we look at any sort of anime and they have the credits roll, you would see that 50% of the names are Korean, Vietnamese,
Yeah.
Chinese, or whatever.
But playing devil's advocate here, and this was like sort of my internal kind of thinking process was like, how do I define it, right? Because technically, when you outsource your work for most of these cases, obviously there'll be exceptions to like Thailand and Vietnam and South Korea. The issue is that a lot of these outsourced work is the in-between animations, the very grunt work,
It
if you
doesn't
will.
necessarily like reflect the core concept of the
Right.
anime.
The storyboarding is still done by a Japanese person. It is still headed on, at least in name, the frontman is the Japanese studio or director's Japanese, so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
So that one, I'll be like, yes, it is an international effort, but it is not an international. Well, I mean, it's just an anime in that sense, but it is made by people from a wide range of cultures, identities, and whatnot. Things that, that is just the way things are for it at the moment, right? But I just feel that, like, for example, there is this huge plethora of anime or anime-esque shows that almost no one talks about. Except for, I think, last time it was mentioned in any great capacity, Giga mentioned it, which was there was an esports anime
from China.
Exactly. And then if you remember, whenever we go to anychart.net specifically, they will always show, or even on Mal, actually my anime list, there's a shit ton of these Chinese, clearly Chinese because their names and the staff are all in Chinese.
Like Link Click?
Yeah, and Link Click is, I would say, probably of all of those shows, the one that sticks out in terms of the one that even we know and care about. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean then that all those other shows are bad, right? So I just wanted to have that conversation with you, and I guess for the audience.
Well, I think that especially with stuff like Yasuke, Grimm, Batman Ninja, I mean, let's not forget about Afro Samurai as well, right? Japanese
course.
studio, Japanese produced, but with only an English track, right? So,
And
it's,
how many motherfuckers are
Yeah.
recorded and said, yeah.
and also if we look into, like, for example, with Batman Ninja, the character designer for Afro Samurai also did the character design for Batman Ninja, but it was done by DC Entertainment, but very much done in a quote unquote anime aesthetic. I think like those are like essentially edge cases, right? It's like you said, right? Because of how wide the anime slash animation landscape is, it starts becoming a little like muddier if we want to try and define things, because a lot of stuff, like, there's no originality really, right? Like everybody,
I mean, we had that discussion, right?
everybody borrows something from somewhere, and therefore it's like if we talk about Grimm, right, it's Japanese produced, but it derives from like
The Brothers Grimm fairy tales.
so
Yeah.
then like how is that truly an adaptation that is purely Japanese? Like it's hard to say, but like there's Japanese adaptations of other Western
Yeah.
medias, Western like sources as well. So it's not black and white really,
Right.
but I think like for the most part it is, right? If we're talking like Naruto's definitely an anime, right?
Yeah, I know.
And like Avatar, at least in my opinion, is not an anime.
Yes, but when it becomes a bit okay. So first of all, when someone says, "Oh, you mean like animation," and I say, "No, anime," I have received. I mean, less so now because a lot of people nowadays know the difference, or at least know that there is some sort of distinguishing factor. When I say anime, it doesn't mean that all animations are anime, but all anime has animation, similar as you said with what is cartoon and what's anime. At the same time, my line that I draw between things like Pokemon, Digimon, and even to a certain degree like Beyblade and Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a bit closer to gray area, that I would consider them anime, but add the cartoon in the beginning and have it be distinct. Not
Cartoon, why though? Like, is it just because it's a large media franchise? Is it because of the aesthetic? Is it because of what you feel its purpose of existence is?
so for me personally, when I consider what is considered a cartoon, there are certain parameters. So for example, if it's of Western origin and it is mainly targeted towards kids, it's definitely a cartoon. So you say, okay, then what about Beyblade? That's not necessarily a Western production, so to speak, right? But then I would be like, well, it's kind of like a never-ending kind of storyline, right? It just is, in many ways, like a shonen. But it's also geared towards children and merchandising.
Well, I mean, there's children's anime.
Absolutely.
So like, but then like, would you say children's anime just default to being cartoons?
I would say cartoon anime, yeah.
Or
like,
but you still attach the word anime
what's
with it, though, right?
Suyunzi in English?
Little Maruko,
Yeah.
Maruko-chan.
I consider that a cartoon anime.
But
Or
you
like
still,
Doraemon as well.
but you would still attach the word anime with it though.
Absolutely, but
Right.
I would not consider it. I would not put it in the same category per se as.
Is it because of its influence on us when we were children, or do you feel like that's generally what its general purpose is?
I mean, it's the same thing with like. Well, then, Jason, you watched Dragon Ball, or you would have watched Yu Yu Hakusho as a kid. Do you consider that cartoon anime? And then I would say no, it is an anime. And then you look at me, be like, well, then, like that doesn't make much sense. And I'm like,
None of it does, really.
none of it does. You're not wrong, but then that's where I draw the line.
I don't know. I mean, I would consider Maruko-chan. I would consider Doraemon, even Crayon Shin-chan, stuff like that. Those are anime,
Right.
right? But it's because of like the definition that I attach to the word anime.
So
where
what is it?
just that so it is an animation that is originally derived from Japan, whether or not it is for a certain age group,
Okay.
right? I mean, you would say cartoon anime, you would say adult anime, you would say something anime, but in the end, the core of it is still very much an anime. So I don't think we're that different from that.
No,
right?
no,
We're still
Yes,
very much like
yes,
agreeing that like
yes.
it is an anime. It's just that the purpose it serves is not the same across the board.
Now, let's move away from defining things and now towards the argument of having definitions. And I think having a definition in your mind is perfectly fair. In fact, I mean, that's all we have in terms of defining and classifying things. But at the same time, I believe that in like the modern era, compartmentalizing and classifying and putting everything in a certain particular box, which then fits in a certain particular drawer, is not necessarily always a good thing.
I think it comes part and parcel with a fandom, though, right? Like, if, for example, you're really into pottery, you're really into cooking, you're really into sports, you wouldn't just all of a sudden try and be like too general with certain things because you hold a very close a personal attachment to it. So naturally, you would want to not compartmentalize, but you want to like have defined lines as to what pertains to this particular passion.
I mean,
or this particular hobby.
I mean, you like cooking, obviously.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't say all cooking is the same. There's different cuisines from different cultures.
So it's like, for example, if I'm trying to make a ragu and I need to like braise like a short rib and an oxtail in tomato sauce, like a tomato reduction, right? I'm basically cooking meat in liquid. But someone might be like, aren't you just boiling meat in tomatoes? It's like, no, it's different, right? But then when you say like, oh, but aren't you just cooking a protein or some sort of item in a body of liquid? Isn't that just boiling? It's like, well, I mean, in that case, then that you would say that boiling is the same as stewing, is the same as braising and all that. Like that's when you have to like kind of interject and give like a clear definition as to why there are differences. They're subtle, but there is a difference. And it's the same way where you're saying that with anime, especially with like Doraemon, Crayon Shin-chan, stuff like that. I don't even think Crayon Shin-chan is for children out of the way, but like we'll call it as it is for now, right? Like they are anime at its core, just like how if I'm braising something, I am boiling something in liquid, but the differences are minute, but they're also significant at the same time, right? In the way where like you could say Dragon Ball Z on one side, and then you can also say Pokemon on the other side. Both of them are Japanese animations from Japanese studios for originally Japanese audiences that then reached a global audience, but they both serve very different purposes. Differences are minute, right? They both feature action sequences. They both feature like trials and tribulations, a journey from one to another. The elements of overpoweredness and gaining more followers and more powers and all that. There is like a core recipe for both sides. How it's executed is different. How it's interpreted is different. So I think like that's why we have those kind of definitions, because we don't want to try and classify everything under one hood.
What about God of High School?
Yeah, well, I mean I mean the same way with like any of the Crunchyroll adaptations, right? For Webtoon, right? Like the Tower of God with Noblesse, whatever else there may be. It's
like the names are in Korean.
Yeah, the names are Korean. It's
the source
originally Korean source, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's a Japanese anime based on a Korean source. That's where it is. It's not a Korean anime because it wasn't produced in Korea, though they might have people outsourced in Korea to work on it.
So the source and also the other side, which is the production element or nationality or whatever.
Yeah.
Those are the two kind of distinguishing factors that will help you or anyone determine whether or not something is considered an anime or not. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. So, like for example, with like, going back to Yasuke, it would be a Western funded, Western conceptualized, but Japanese produced and executed anime.
Right. But that's a mouthful, though.
But at the same time, it's also like it's still an American property. It's still an American writer who has basically created an American script, an English script, then also had one that's transliterated for a Japanese audience as well. There is also enough grounds to say that Yasuke is not an anime.
Oh, by the way, in case I didn't address it already, I think Arcane is an animation.
Yep.
Obviously, I would not classify it as a cartoon. I wouldn't classify it as an anime, but I would say it's an animation. Just like how, in a certain vein, like Pixar films are animations.
And much in the same way that I would also say then, like, Avatar is not an anime.
Right.
Though I have had a lot of friends who, when I ask them what their favorite anime is, and they say Avatar, non-sarcastically, just like, okay.
I mean, for what it's worth, I think Avatar The Last Airbender is awesome. But if you were to say, well, then Jason, do you consider an anime? I would say no.
Right.
And I know that angers a lot of people, and then that also rallies a lot of people. And then this gets into sort of the final kind of area that I want to at least touch upon before we then jump around, which is how much of this semantic, pedantic, distinguishing factors become less useful and more destructive. Now, as you said, right, like compartmentalizing certain things, similar with your brazing argument, or like, you know, not reducing something that is actually very complex into just one kind of concept, is something that is not only very natural, but I think is extremely helpful and useful for people to know exactly, specifically what you're referring to. However, where do you personally will draw the line of, bro, like, just chill the fuck out. Like, they're all good stuff, okay? Just, okay, this matters a little bit. This doesn't matter. So why are you guys fighting over it? Can't we just both enjoy this awesome piece of work?
I think, like, if it comes down to the level of how pedant you want to be,
Yeah.
right? How much of a pedant you want to be, how specific you want to be, I think we don't need to look further than what we would consider things to be as the GOAT. Right, the greatest of all time. So if we were to say, for example, we go into my anime list and see what the greatest anime of all time is, according to Raw Score, right now it would be Kaguya-sama Season 3, right? For the longest time, it was Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. But what really constitutes it as being the greatest anime of all time? Because the genres aren't even the same. If you compare Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood and Kaguya-sama Season 3, there's nothing in common with either of them.
I do get what you're saying.
In the same way, for example, like if we talk about in sports, right? Like right now, like Stephen Curry just won his fourth ring with the Golden State Warriors, and then now it's like, oh, does he make the greatest of all time? It's like if he were to play one-on-one against LeBron James, who would win? It's like, well, like of course, like it's hard to say because one is an elite 3-point shooter, the other one is an all-around like ground and pound like power forward. They don't even play the same positions. They're not the same height. They're not even the same weight. They're not even the same age. How is it that easy for us to really compare the two? And so I think like when it comes to like having to have slightly like clearly defined lines and keeping certain things separate, like it's those kinds of instances where like, yeah, it makes sense to try and keep things separate, because when we start clouding everything together, then like what's the point really in having like pages specifically for genres, pages specifically for themes and like age groups and whatnot, when at the end of the day it's all just anime,
right?
You know, like that's I think like that's why we like as fans of certain things, as I mentioned, right, we want to at least have those kinds of definitions, because then it becomes easier for us to familiarize with certain things. Just because I like watching anime doesn't mean I like watching all genres of anime.
Sure.
I mean, like I started off watching gore and violence and shonen and supernatural mysteries and thrillers, and then over time I started watching more CGT, more ESK, more slice of life, stuff like that, right? Doesn't necessarily mean that like I will put those on the same pedestal as watching. Like, I mean, like I as much as you hate Inuyashiki, I freaking love Inuyashiki. But I mean, that's why it's just like the way we all define things is very, very different, and the most important thing is that it's all personal as well.
Yeah,
My definitions are never going to be the same as yours, but I'm also not going to challenge what your definition is, because I'm not you.
Right.
I don't see anime the same way you do, but we may have a general similarity when it comes to the appreciation of certain properties, certain genres.
But you know
characters.
for a fact that not everyone feels the same way you and I do.
But that's the thing. Again, it comes down to a personal understanding of what it means to like anime, what it means to watch anime, and what it means to define anime as well. So there might be some big general perception, right? Whatever, like, oh, like 99% of people believe that anime is this, and only 1% believe it's that. Well, then why are we having this discussion? You know?
So, do you think that at some point in the future, however into the future it would be, would there be a time when you would entertain the thought that if something is not spoken in Japanese, that it would be considered an anime? because the staff, the production is very Japanese, is people, Japanese staff, or the topic or the theme or the source can be Japanese, but for some reason, and this is a hypothetical, obviously, the language for some reason is not Japanese.
I think that at that point, I mean, we may have that come up in the future, but I feel that the fandom itself is still and will still be too diehard to kind of be lax about it.
Right.
And again, it just comes down to the fact that there's so many individuals who like and appreciate anime and manga that we all will inherently have our own ways of interpreting things.
And
that's just, I mean, the fact that it's like, there are people who, like we said already, there's people who consider Avatar and Arcane as anime. I'm not going to tell them they're wrong. They're wrong based on my own definition, but I'm not going to say, no, that's not an anime. You should change your opinion on that. Like, cause where am I coming in from to tell them that what they believe is wrong and I'm right? I could also be completely wrong with how I say things. It's just, that's why we have these kinds of fluid concepts and terms, right? In as much as we want to try and define things and create things in its own compartments, who's to say that what we think is correct as well? Who's to say that what we say is wrong? It's
right. Just because the majority of people believe what we might believe in something does not mean then, therefore, that is the reality of it. I mean, a weird side note that all of a sudden popped into my mind is the doctor who who founded lobotomy. He was a Nobel Prize winner, okay? Like hailed as a visionary.
It's great because only just 2 weeks ago I watched Shutter Island as well, so good time to talk about that.
Yeah, and then nowadays, lobotomy is
completely ridiculed
and
it's
shunned.
This is crazy.
Like, the fuck are you doing, guys? But back then,
that was the old age, and then you had the new age psychiatry where it's just maybe rather than trying to find actual physical and visual evidence of psychological problems, why don't we actually try and go into the more deep-rooted issues from a more mental and emotional perspective?
Yeah.
And that's when you have the new age psychiatry come in.
Right. And to coincide that with an art form, subjectivity is the name of the game at the end of the day, right? A person will interpret or like it a certain animation, whatever you want to call it, differently than another person, as you said, right? Does that mean one person is right over the other? No. And just because we might subscribe to a belief that is the common belief doesn't mean that that belief won't change or be lauded as a blasphemous thing to say, I don't know, however in the future, or maybe it won't, right? I just feel that kind of discourse is fucking stupid.
But it's always going to exist.
It is going to always exist.
Because we're all human, and naturally we were all very protective of things that we like and things that we feel we have some ownership over.
Yeah.
Right? And
and we're not
and anime and manga is a hardcore fan base.
Yeah. I don't want to speak for Will. I am not immune to this. I also sometimes would have these petty definitions that distinguish something from another thing, and other people are they're kind of the same thing, and I'm no, but really, how the fuck can you say that with a straight face? So the reason why I wanted to sort of bring this up is because anime is not only getting more popular, but there are all these lines that are kind of drawn by all these individual people and fans, but it is getting so blurred that everyone feels that their definition is right or wrong, and then they feel attacked or encroached upon, and then they have all these arguments. And at the end of the day, to me, the definitions and sorting of categories is only useful to a point. Then afterwards, go fuck yourself.
Well, let's also not ignore the fact as well that, with the rise of not even the rise, the fact that anime is super fucker popular right now, that it can easily be used by major corporations and businesses as a marketing tool as well. Hence why you would see stuff for instance, Yasuke being termed as an anime, because then it's oh shit, this is a Western script, but it is produced as an anime. Ooh, this must be interesting. And then, of course, then you have people pulling out their pitchforks and being like, no, 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 this is completely sham. This is not an anime. This is just an animation, yada, yada, yada. Like you're always going to have two people on both sides of the peanut gallery. Like you're never going to hear the end of it. And I mean, like, not to say it's a bad thing. I think it's good to have these kinds of conversations. I don't think it's
when it's productive, right? Like, oh, no, sorry, not productive, destructive. Because we can have a conversation on Yasuke or the really gray area of is this an anime or not, or Arcane, right? But if we then end up, the whole point is not to have a scholarly discussion, but to prove that I am right and you're wrong, and vice versa for you. I'm just like, don't.
Oh, but people like to argue. People like to fight online. People like to say shit just for the sake of saying it. Like, that's never gonna end, really. I mean, we can all try to reach some sort of general consensus, but there's gonna be a couple bad apples on the side.
Right.
Yeah. So, bottom line, is Yasuke an anime? I don't know.
How about Yasuke is just bad?
Well, again,
minus Flying Lotus.
Again,
the soundtrack's pretty good.
Again, right? Like, there's that's where it's like, I don't know.
Wait, you don't know about what?
I don't know. Like, you're asking me, right? Like, I don't like Yasuke.
Yeah, I don't like Yasuke either.
But like, that doesn't necessarily make it a bad anime.
Oh fuck! Are we going to? Okay, what is bad? What is good? Will
no, because again, it just comes down to personal perception too. There's loads of people who love Yasuke, right? But that's because you're asking different people.
Yes.
You ask me, no, I think it's trash.
Right. As
Right.
you said, it's a spectrum, it's a gradient, right? It's a fluid thing, right?
Just like, for example, like with Batman Ninja, the DC and graphic novel fandom hate it. The anime fandom hate it. I'm in the middle, and I absolutely love it.
Really, I don't like it.
I fucking
I think
love
I
it.
gave it a 7 or something.
That's still pretty good, right? 7's still good. It's mid, but
wait,
it's still
wait.
it's still good.
Oh, it's the same as Inuyashiki Last Hero, so it's okay, right?
I fucking hate this shit, but I have to give it a 7 because it's not a 6, but I can't give it an 8.
And even people are like telling me this, right? Like, and they're like, dude, just
for someone who feels so passionately against it, you still gave it a good score.
right. It's like they were listening and they're like, well, Will always ends up with the final remark of, but you still gave it a 7, right, Jason? And Jason, yeah, you did give it a 7. You had every right to give it whatever score that you feel it was appropriate, but you complained it to high heavens. Then Seventh Heaven decided to be like, yo, give it a 7. And you're just like, well.
Yeah, that you giving that 7 was just a cop-out in the end, right? You just wanted to, you know that you could just give it. You wouldn't even grade it because you would just be like, this was just atrociously, like, irritating for me to watch.
But it wasn't bad, though.
Right? So that's...
It's shit, but it's not bad. But then you're like, what's the difference between shit and bad? It's the same thing.
See, we're still going back in circles about, like, what it means to be, like, this and that. It's a never-ending conversation.
I mean, I think one of the common themes or common occurrences throughout the GAP podcast is having to clearly define, for the sake of that episode or for the sake of us and the listeners reaching an understanding of what we expect this definition to be. Doesn't mean it's right. It just means this is for...
In that particular context,
exactly, right? So I just thought that I would bring up this issue of what is considered an anime, what is not. Is that even a good conversation to have?
The thing is, well, because with this conversation, with this particular topic, it's like there's so many different contexts to come from as well.
I know
So,
that
yeah.
like this is meant to be a bit kind of off the cuff and free flow, right? But
It was very off the cuff. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of shit off my mind right now. And it's also, again, it's also like, at the end of this conversation, like, I started off by saying, no, it had anime is from Japan. Anime is this, but then you're just like, well, okay, but Mappa Studio produced Yasuke. Is that an anime? It's like, now I'm second guessing myself.
yeah, I know, right?
It's just like,
now I'm passing on this existential dread to you.
God, I only just finished watching Welcome to NHK, man. Don't do this to me.
Well, welcome.
And I've also just did a recap episode on Evangelion too. Jesus.
Well, welcome to anime, my man.
Ah, God.
Or anime in quotes.
But anime or anime?
No. Will. Anime.
Anime.
And you may always reach us through our our email at gapalette@gmail.com. That's GAPALETTE. Sorry, at gmail.com, all lowercase, all one word. You may also reach us on Twitter using the handle @PaletteGood. That's capital P and capital G, all one word, or through our GAP Discord using the invite link in the show description. We have a website, www.goodanimepalette.com. You should check it out. Will has a very interesting about him intro that I think you should check out at the very least. I think it's written extremely well. Pinnacle of English language. Our intro music for this BP is It's Always You by Rambutan. And our outro No! Fuck, I did it again, Will. Fuck.
Bring it back again.
Music credits for this episode. Our intro music, Will, is Relaxation Station by Magnus Ringblom. And our outro music is Golden Rules by Luax.
There you go.
You know,
what else can you get when you go on to Epidemic Sounds as well?
Well, you can always support the music artists we feature by listening to them on Spotify, Apple Music, or other various music listening platforms. Our royalty-free music was provided by Epidemic Sounds. If you're interested, you can sign up using our referral link in the show description to get 10% off of your first 12 months and the first 30 days of your subscription for free. Terms and conditions apply. I'm just going to say it right now, Will. I think if I can give myself an award during the finale of shit that Jason gets wrong, it is the
music credits?
The music credits this season. Because I never had this problem, really. But all of a sudden this season, it just happened like 5 times already.
Funny enough, we only have like 5 episodes and 2 BPs as well, so
Jesus Christ, I don't know.
Good track record, man. You should own up to it. Yeah. So may I anime now? Or is anime
I'm trying to think of like a pun or stupid lame ass pun or segue. Let me think.
I mean, if you're listening to this, we hope you didn't break your mind into wondering if anime really is anime. Like, just watch stuff. Just watch cartoons.
You anime not go ape shit about this definition or this conversation about anime.
There you go. There's your pun. All right. I think this is a good time to sign off then.
Peace out.